Okay, thank you. All right, so we're at 11 o'clock and we're going to call the Finance Committee meeting to order. I'd like to start by acknowledging that we are privileged to meet on the unceded and ancestral territories of the Squamish and Scottney nations. With that, there is an agenda recommendation.
That the agenda of this meeting be approved.
Thank you, Cynthia. A second for that.
Turpin.
Any objections? Seeing and hearing none, that's carried. There's a meeting recommendation or a minute recommendation here. Oh, no.
Just reference.
Just a reference. Disregard. Are there any trustee items? Okay, seeing and hearing none. We don't have any presentations. So that brings us to information items. Danielle, you're going to speak to the partner group meeting. Again, as a reminder, I will be here.
Right, thank you. Yeah, so this is just a reminder, we have our partner group meeting. It's next Wednesday. And the meeting will be going over our budget survey results, and just for everybody's reference, the agenda is attached in here. That's at Whistler Secondary School.
Any questions? Like, cause I think you're going to be missing, I believe, Rachel and myself, and now most likely April. Well, who knows with April?
Likely, yeah.
I don't think April.
Probably not, but you
Who
never
knows?
know with
She's
her.
a really strong woman.
She's very,
And she's very
smart on
stubborn.
her way to the hospital.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Mm.
And will everyone else be in attendance or anyone else not attending?
Okay, then.
Perfect. I just want to make sure if we're
Okay.
missing three
Yep.
people, it's already. Okay, fantastic. So that brings us to our discussion items. 2024-2025 amended annual budget and bylaw.
Mhm.
You're running through this now, or is Elena?
No, I'm going
Super.
to, yeah. So, everybody, Elena's joining us online. She's feeling under the weather, so I'm gonna do my best to go through everything. So I'm gonna do my best to go through the budget update for everybody. So I as I mentioned at the last board meeting, the timeline was super tight to get the amended budget done on time. So I just wanted to thank Elena, who worked extra hard to get it done on time for us today. So thanks, Elena, for that. And I'll just jump right in. She is available for questions if there are any. And she helped me get ready for today. So thank you, Elena, for everything you've done for today. I'll just share my screen here. So I'm just going to walk through the changes. So just to refresh for everybody, this is the 24-25 amended budget. So the current year that we're in. So that's what we're going over today. And so we are going to be reviewing the amended annual budget today, and that will be going for first, second, and third reading later this evening. And some highlights that I just wanted to go over with you. So the enrollment-based operating grant has increased from the preliminary budget, which was passed in June, by 2.8 million. And that includes changes to student count. So down here, have it in here. Student count, which was 185 FTE higher than the preliminary budget. And unique changes it also includes unique student needs and supplemental funding. The total operating grant is 2.6 million higher than projected. As you can see right here. These extra funds here added to 2.6. The operating grants changes based on the February and May students are not currently reflected in the ministry grant tables yet, so we had to add that in as well. And you can actually see that down here, these ones here. So the district expects 49.75 FTE, or just over 300,000 related to that. The total budgeted operating grant is 66.1 million. So that's all the operating grants right here. And this also includes 1.2 million of revenue we're expecting to get from Lil Wat Nation for our local education agreement. And we also received, if you scroll back up here a little bit, 77,000 for Indigenous Education Council, which is a new grant that we received this year.
How often, you don't mind me jumping in?
Yeah.
How often do we, or what is the schedule for receiving your tuition from the one?
So we invoice them 3 times a year, but it doesn't necessarily correlate when we receive funds from them. So, because they actually don't get their funds until I think it's April. So we kind of just wait until they are able to pay us. And they also are like trying to reconcile their numbers with ours as well.
Okay, I'm just curious if it could impact us.
It does
with
impact
cash
us.
flow.
It does. 100%, yeah. So we usually get it like if we didn't have the agreement, we would have the funds right away from the province. So it does delay for sure. So we have
So that's, is that a ministry issue that the funds aren't being transferred to Lula in a timely fashion and therefore we're not receiving it in a timely fashion?
no, the ministry is kind of out of the loop on this one. So it's actually the funds go directly from the federal government to the First Nation.
Mhm.
And so the timing is different from when the province was giving us funds. For when the federal government gives Lil Wat Nation later. And then it takes them a while to also like process payments. It has to go through council because it's a large amount. So it does take a while.
And delays again, okay.
Yeah.
So we could be almost a full school year into it before we see the tuition dollars for that year.
Last year we saw about half of it by the end of the year.
Only half.
Yeah. Out of like 1 million.
My only thing is that this could be an advocacy piece that we talk to the CSTA about or someone
Yeah.
because it's unacceptable that we see those types of delays. And I work with the federal government and other things, and I know treasury is next to impossible sometimes.
Yeah, yeah.
And the delays, and they cut you off and don't send it, and no explanation or anything.
Yeah, it's been really difficult. We were trying to reconcile our numbers with Lil Wat for last year because we had differing numbers. And so they were trying to work with the federal government and they weren't getting a response for quite a while
Mhm.
from them. We were able to get responses from the provincial government, but the federal government it was taking them. I think they said they tried to email them like many, many times and they weren't hearing a response. So there's been some issue, like it's been difficult for Lil Wat Nation as well.
May I?
Yeah, go ahead.
So I'm just taking a look at this paperwork with our amended annual budget. And can you help me understand where the total revenues line item doesn't match what is in our total revenues line item on statement 2 in the updated amended annual budget?
Elena, are you there? Oh, Elena, you're muted, dear.
I'm available. Sorry, it's my winter voice. So I hope you will understand what I'm saying.
Of course we will. Thank you.
The document that is right now shared on the screen doesn't include capital fund. We always talk, when we present quarterly reports, we talk about three funds: operating, special purpose funds, and capital. This document doesn't include capital because there is no cash. There is no revenue per se because the revenue is actually amortization of capital contributions. So there is not much benefit of kind of managing it because it really doesn't much depend on us. So the by law statement 2 has all 3 funds together. That's why the difference. So
Okay,
if you
thank
look
you.
at the
So that's 3.657 million on the amortization of deferred capital revenue should get me to these totals though, should it not?
It should, if you look at the bylaw last page, statement schedule 4, capital transactions, you will see the total revenue. If you add it, it should give you the total.
So it should be the same
No,
as this.
Not the total operating grant, but total revenues together.
Okay, all right. I just wanted to make sure I wasn't missing something there. Thank you so much.
No, 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 no.
So, just a quick reminder to those online, when we're doing a screen share, I can't really see much of you. So just speak up if you have a question. And I think, Cynthia, you had a question?
Yeah, I just wanted to go back to what you were talking about before with the reimbursement. I guess you would call it a reimbursement for the LEAs.
Mhm.
Do you know, are other districts, like related to Rebecca talking about advocacy, do you know if other districts are having the same,
Yes, they are.
experiencing the same thing? They are.
Yeah, they are.
Because they're all dealing with the federal government.
Yes, yeah.
They'll be.
And then there's other districts, I know they have multiple LEAs with multiple names.
Oh, yeah.
So
Some
that
of them
might
have
even
11.
compound it, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So it would be,
Yeah.
that would possibly, it could be good advocacy, yeah.
A good idea. Okay, let's see, where did I leave? Oh.
Melissa?
When you get grants like for the Indigenous Education Council, do you have stipulations on what that can be spent on?
Yes, we do.
Yeah.
So it can be used for travel purposes. There's certain things that the government gave us that we're allowed to choose or use it for. It's specifically for Indigenous Education Councils meetings.
And
Yeah.
they develop their own terms of reference.
Yeah.
It should cover off on.
It should, yeah, determine.
And I would anticipate that there may be some alteration changes. The first time they've done it, they did it based on FTE.
Mhm.
And you know, because we had some great practices going on. Good relationship, I would say. We probably don't need to be accessing the funds as much as some districts, which are just working on pulling people together and holding multiple meetings, pulling people in from various areas with hotels and
Starting
travel
from
for some,
scratch.
starting from scratch. So, you know, I know that Pauline is working with the IEC to ensure, right, that it's a reasonable amount. And while we have the full amount, I don't anticipate us needing to spend all of it, which I think is important because these are all dollars provided from the ministry, and then there'll probably be either a change to the amount or a broadening of what the money can be used for to benefit students. So, but it is a restricted fund as it is right now. Yeah, it can't be used for anything else beyond
Mhm.
the parameters of the envelope that was provided.
Yeah, and we don't know if we're getting funds for that next year either, so.
Oh, really? It's not ongoing.
Don't know.
We're not sure yet. We're asking the same questions.
Find out March
Because
15th.
for us, it might be, could we have this as a 3-year?
Yeah.
And spend, that would be more realistic for us and then for other districts to have it spread out over time. So we're waiting to hear. We've asked those questions as well.
Mhm.
Is there anything else? You want to continue?
So for the international student enrollment, we had budgeted, we ended up with, from the preliminary budget, an extra $190,500. So that was an additional 12.7 FTE, which was at 153 for the preliminary, or this is it's 12.7 FTE higher than the preliminary budget. And other revenues at approximately 600,000 are related to labor settlement. I think I have that highlighted down here. Oh, maybe it's up a bit more. Right here, labor settlement. And then we also have, in addition to that, some of these other revenues here. There's about 237,000. That's related to interest from bank accounts, trades funding, and ministry initiatives, as well as revenue from other school districts. And we have right here, 11.3 million for special purpose funds. 2.1 out of this 2.1 increase from the preliminary budget. A huge chunk of it's related to this classroom enhancement fund increase. We also had added in some funds that weren't included in the first budget, including tripart transportation agreement funds, mental health in schools, seamless day, and a group of special purpose funds for early learning. Usually we don't add that in until the ministry announces them, which is later in the year. So. Compared to the preliminary budget, our revenues increased by 6.4 million for operating. Just want to check and see if anybody has any questions here. Good. Okay. So out of that, we're using 590,000 carry forward from special purpose funds from previous years. So those are funds given to us from the province we weren't able to use yet. And then we've also restricted 1.1. This is funds that we've restricted previously, 1.1 million. And we have zero amount of unrestricted, which is excellent because we're not taking anything from our unrestricted surplus. So happy to say that. Yeah.
Last year we had to, didn't we?
Last year we did. Yeah. So hopefully if we stay on track with our spending this year, we'll stay within budget. We don't have to use any, we're hoping. So the total operating and special purpose fund revenue, so like Elena said, that doesn't include any capital revenues, is 84.7 million. Okay, and then I'll keep moving along here. So the next piece here is the expenses, or sorry, this is the allocation. So it is the expenses related, how the revenues are allocated out. So 55 million extra, or 55 point, sorry, not extra, but 55 million was allocated to schools. That went up by 5.8 million from the preliminary budget. There was also, so compared to last year's amended budgets, that's 3.9 million more than last year's amended budget, just for reference. We also increased leave provisions by $10,000. So far it looks like we're on pretty good track for leave provisions, although I know there has been a lot of sickness in the new year, so might not be doing as well as we expect. And let me just see here.
Yeah, there's definitely been a lot of people getting sick.
Yeah. Oh, here's that. So we went up by 10,000 for leave provisions here. And then for educational support, we have an additional 406,000. And for operations, maintenance and transportation, that's increased by 215,000. Most of that's related to increased municipal taxes. And overall, allocations are at 84.7 million. And we have a small contingency that will just go into our unrestricted surplus. And we're expecting our unrestricted surplus to be at 1.46% of our total operating expenses. And for those of you that might recall, our surplus policy requires us to have in between 1% and 4%. Expenses. Okay, and then I'm just going to skip over to a couple staffing changes. Just here the summary page here.
That's a good question. Really quickly.
Of course.
When you say increase in municipal taxes, do you mean SLRD or one of the three municipalities? Where is that money coming from? Or if sorry if that's too specific, if you
I
don't.
don't know. I think it's coming from all of them. Elena, are you there? I don't know if she's still there or not.
I'm
Oh.
here.
Oh, okay.
Municipal taxes, we get bills in May, June, and they are for the calendar year, which means each bill we split into our fiscal years. Half goes to, for instance, if you get bill for 2025 in May, we will split it, half of it into 24-25 year, and another half will be considered prepaid. So the last tax bill we paid 2024, and we compared the trend how utility taxes going up year over year. So we estimated that our 2025 bill will be that much higher. It was, if I remember correctly, around 40,000 higher.
Is it across all the municipalities, Alana?
All three together, yes.
Yeah.
Well, and SLRD as well.
Do we get a bill from SLRD?
We get three bills: Squamish, District of Squamish, Resort Municipality of Whistler, and Village of Pemberton.
Okay.
But not the regional district?
No, the original just doesn't bill us for utility.
Mhm.
I will go and look at my tax bill immediately when I get home because I'm certain. What's that?
I don't think it's I pay land taxes and second district taxes.
Something to, yeah, no, I'm certain.
Yeah, and Darcy, everybody's paying.
I'm sure.
Maybe it's in my land tax.
You're on a farm. Anyway, sorry, thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Alana. Okay, so just, there wasn't a lot of changes in staffing from the original budget, so I'll just go over them really quickly here. So in learning services, we saw right here, a decrease in 1.29 FTE, inclusion support team coordinator decrease. The next one I'm going to is B2 and elementary counseling. There was an increase there on 0.2 FTE. Then I'm going to skip down to D5. Here's D5. So there was a net decrease of 0.4 for student success advisor. And I just want to mention, I believe a bunch of this was also picked up by targeted funds.
That's right.
And then I'll skip over to D7. So there's a slight increase to the ECE hours. So it's 0.150. The next one is D9. And for we had a slight increase to the French coordinator, slight decrease to the French coordinator. And the next one is F4. It's further down the page here. Here's F4. And then there was a decrease to the ILT team by 0.31. Any questions around any of that?
Brian, is there a decrease?
I'm not sure about that. I think is that because the principal, it's teachers now because our principal went back to more admin time. Oh, can you reference that? I don't recall that.
I don't have an explanation for that because that's a bit of a surprise to you.
This is from the preliminary budget. So we're looking at stuff like almost a year later.
So this is comparing to our actuals from last year.
This is comparing to our preliminary budget, which we would have developed like way back in May of last year. So at the time, we didn't know what
So
was.
it doesn't reflect a decrease in service from last year.
No. Yeah.
Right.
This is
Well, sorry, we both missed that.
It's based on the preliminary
Got
budget.
So you planned for an increase in service that never happened. Maybe that sounds.
Could be.
I think you'd hoped for 1.4, but it stayed what it was.
That, yeah.
Or it could be something that we just fixed after we reviewed the budget too.
Yeah, I think it has to do with the people, because we have some PVPs involved in ILT as opposed to teachers. So the teachers go down, PVP go up, and we pay for it out of different sources.
Yeah, so we had someone from PVT in a role last year who was not in that role. But but there's a teacher in that role, so it's a less. It's less of a cost. We still have the same FTE, but it costs us less, so that means that. Yeah. Part of it.
May
Yes.
I?
Yeah, go ahead, Lisa.
Are these decreases based on changes in our operating structure, or are they based on unfilled positions? What are we?
They're based on what's actually been hired into for these positions for this year. So it could be in some cases that we were unable to get them, or
Are we still talking
Not
about
an
changes?
ILT.
I
I
don't,
think she's talking about everything. Is
Yeah, a
that
little
correct?
bit of everything. Yeah, a little bit, just trying to get a
Gonna stop
glimpse
sharing.
into.
so as Danielle mentioned, these are based on preliminary and now they're fixing some of it, so it could be multiple reasons.
Factors.
Example, like Paul just cited that having a teacher in a VP role costs less. So it could be that, it could be unable to fill the position for a while, like there's multiple factors. They could have been allocated additional in anticipation, and the reality is now showing in this,
Mhm.
in these documents, because it's actually what is happening this calendar year.
Mhm. I'm just gonna stop sharing.
Hope that helps you.
Any other questions there?
Any?
So that's all I have for notes. There is a really great infographic that Lena and Jen Morris prepared for us. If anybody wants to take a look, or I could pull it up, but it just some things that I noticed is if you look at the enrollment trend, it's pretty flat for like the last 3 or 4 years. So that's pretty indicative of what we're seeing for funding. So as the enrollment is staying flat, our expenses are increasing. So it just means more pressure on the system as a whole.
And for any public listening, I would suggest we also maybe mention that as part of the open when we do the report out, because I think those infographics are very important for the public to be aware of. If we're going to be experiencing some pressure moving forward, which I shared before that I believe we will, I think it's important that folks have an opportunity to know that those resources exist for education of the public. And I think those graphs are very, very clear. And you can see as we were gaining in enrollment over the years, that our costs would be here and our enrollment would be higher in terms of generating funds. So we were able to, again, have contingencies that were at a certain level. And as enrollment levels off, but costs go up, right? Our contingency is getting lower as costs increase. So what we don't want to see is that reverse happen where our expenses outpace the revenues, and then that's when boards of education have to make decisions. We're not at that point yet. We're being as prudent as possible as a role of you, but I would just suggest that that be something that gets reported out by finance committee to the board, just for the public to take a look at those graphs.
Great idea. Cynthia?
And is it safe to say that you'll share this infographic at the partners group meeting?
I think, is this the
Or is
one
it
to share?
Maybe.
Not this one, but I think there's another one that's similar. that goes
Okay,
down.
great. Yeah, I think the infographics are really helpful for people to take it's just a really quick, easy way to get a really clear picture of what's happening.
Okay, so. Right, Celeste?
I did have a couple questions about the amended annual budget document. If it's okay, I think you skip to the one underneath. Is now a good time, Danielle?
Yeah, sure.
Under bullet A. So the question that I had was about the deficit of 1.49 million, which is shown on statement 4 and statement 2. Can you just walk us through? We've discussed this before. It was 1.7 something in the prior year. Just walk us through the reason for that, where the money's coming from. And then I'm also curious about any projections that you've done for future years, and because we've talked in the past about the unsustainability, and what's to come, and as Chris just alluded to, how that will impact the work of the board in future years.
Mhm. Okay, so right now, the way we've done the budget is that we're not using any of our unrestricted funds, right? But we are dipping in, and that does take into account the funds that we're using for special purpose funds that we haven't used to date. So that is showing that the amount of money we're coming in, that the expenses are higher because we are using up special purpose funds from prior years that we have received funding for. And also we have restricted funds that we put funds set aside for certain things. And that's like some of that spending is being used up by those restricted funds that we have set aside as well. So that's like together, that's 1.1 million, and special purpose funds is 590,000. But that almost makes up the 1.4. That makes sense. Elena, did you want to add anything?
Yes, like Daniel said, special purpose funds and a restricted portion of operation funds, or as a surpluses, we have to spend them. So it's normal that we budget spending using surplus from carry forward from prior year. And our 3-year plan that we're going to present later this year in June, we will be adopting next year budget, annual budget, and 3-year plan. And 3-year plan will have next year plus 2 more years showing how we're seeing operations being sustainable in near future.
3 years out, yeah.
That's awesome.
So we'll be seeing that probably in May, our 3-year financial plan.
Yeah, and just for the benefit of the public, what should we expect to see? You know, 1.79 seems to be a high number for a deficit. What should we expect to see on these lines for surplus or deficit for the year moving forward? What's your goal, Daniel?
Well, I know like Chris, Elena, and I, and even Paul, we've talked about increasing our the amount of our unrestricted. We'd like it to be closer to 2%, because right now it's at 1.57. So really that is like what we would like ideally, but we don't really know what the grant tables look like from the ministry at this point, and we won't know until March 15th is when they're going to release the budgets to us. So I mean, ideally it has to stay between 1 and 4. Like it's really, to us, it's all about what is our unrestricted surplus. The 1.7, like with it including capital and also with it including surplus funds, like we have those surplus restricted funds and the special purpose funds money sitting there. So that's fine. And that's adding to this. So it doesn't look good, but it's fine because we have that money unspent. It's the unrestricted piece that we have to keep an eye on. And so that's the one that we would like for it to be at 2%. But we'll have to see what the numbers play out at when we're preparing the budgets for the May board meeting.
And how nervous are you right now about how things are looking? Surely you've looked into the future, and we'll look forward to what you present us in terms of a 3-year plan moving forward. I know that a lot of this is being driven by things like sick leave, which are beyond our control. So how are you feeling now?
I think last year we did significant cost restrictions, or I guess we were like really paying attention to our cost last year. And so that we've just kind of continued on doing that for this year. So I think we're doing pretty good overall. And I expect that it'll probably look pretty much the same. There might even be less, likely there's going to be less money because we don't foresee our enrollment to be like increasing significantly. So I suspect it'll be flat again. And so that just means more pressure on us. So we'll have to continue to look for efficiencies.
And we have some things that we've been working on that we'll share at a later date, and we have all of the details. And if there's things that we're doing from the board, we'll again work together with the board to help you on making the decisions that are necessary moving forward. But we've got a plan.
Yeah. Was there anything else?
I don't have anything.
Okay, we're cutting into our lunch. All right, do other questions, comments? So that brings us to questions of clarification from the public. Oh, is there an action item?
I'll
Oh,
just share.
now there is.
So I will share with you that, thank you to Christina Forsythe for the opportunity to listen in, and she was just sharing that the link that we have to the infographic currently asks folks to sign in, so we have to change permissions. So just for the public,
Oh, okay.
we'll take care of that and make sure it's accessible. So thank you, Christina.
With that, there is a recommendation.
That the finance committee recommend the Board of Education approve the 2024-2025 amended annual budget as presented.
Thank you, Cynthia, and second for that. Melissa. All those in favor? And that's carried. Now, do we have any questions of clarification?
No, we do not.
Okay, so with that, we've concluded the business of this agenda and we are now adjourned. And we will be resuming at 12:15 of the committee of the whole. Thank you.